Hi, everybody. It's Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today is so exciting. It's day 2 of Acrylic April, where we're working on skills to be able to paint water better. And today is how we're going to get reflective. On the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
He's going to help me bring these amazing lessons to you every day. One, by turning all the cameras on, he's going to be zooming in with his robotic camera so you can see the techniques, so you can see the action. I'm going to explain every step of this process, broken down and really drilled out so you can really understand what it is, because what you can understand, you can do for yourself at home. This particular lesson is going to be focusing on how we create a mirrored effect in water. We're going to cover the techniques of mirroring. We're going to cover the principles of water reflections versus what we see in the sky. We're going to be doing some bushes, some trees, all fun stuff. And a bunch of extra goodies are going to be in this lesson. I think many of you are going to have a creative breakthrough. So there's nothing to do but grab your T-square, grab your brushes, come back and meet me at this surface right now. I'm going to show you how to paint a reflective morning. What a wonderful way to begin day 2. Some things are exactly the same as yesterday, like the fact that we're going to be working on an 8x8 canvas. My wish on this canvas, my intention for you, my hope for you, is that you have a creative moment of clarity. I think these happen all the time in the artistic journey. And so I hope during Acrylic April and in your painting in general, you're always finding these creative moments of clarity. 8x8 surface. Let's look at the colors real fast. Dioxazine purple, John's favorite color, quinacridone magenta. He used to call that Passamaquoddy pink. Cad red medium, Cad yellow medium, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue. I like to use these together on this type of sky. Mars black, we need that for the deeper silhouettes because we're going to be doing some silhouette work, and titanium white. The other things that I think that you need to know that you're going to be needing is a T-square. You may possibly want artist tape. So those are extra things, and I will be using a watercolor pencil to help me get a horizon line. So those are the curves that could be going on, but all of this is, we try to list these and make sure you have that information around, but I'm just giving you that heads up. Now, I think there's nothing to do, John, but get into step 1 where we talk about water as a mirror. Step 1. So in this journey of water, one of the concepts that I really want to be able to help you guys succeed at is the idea that water is a mirror. It's reflective, but it's also transparent, which makes it an interesting challenge to paint, even in landscapes. Now, on a perfectly calm day with the exact right lighting, you can end up seeing a situation where what is above the water is beautifully reflected in what is on the water, like a reverse image. And that's actually one of the great first fun things we're going to do. So we're going to divide our canvas in half. This is an 8x8, so we'll divide it at the 4-inch spot. And I'm going to take a pencil and come across. So you see that it is perfectly bisected. Do you see that, John? It is perfectly bisected.
I see it.
It is. So when I'm drawing on here, when I'm painting on here, what I'm going to want to do is as above is so below. It's just a saying that you might have heard before.
Yeah.
But the idea is that as I move the clouds here or I do something here, I'm going to want to do the same but opposite here. So if my clouds arc this way or my sky arcs this way, my sky is also going to arc this way. Another thing that's very important that you guys know is that the water will be a little bit darker than what's above it. That's a big thing when you're painting boats, when you're painting oceans, when you're painting reflections that are happening in the water. They're like a value darker in general. So let's begin. I'm going to take a nice oval mop. This is a 1-inch oval mop with synthetic. Lots of brush companies make this brush. I don't do hog or goat for this because they carry too much water. I'm going to come in and get some white loaded on my brush. Nicely, beautifully loaded. And I'm going to begin by taking the upper part of the sky. And at the line, you can kind of see where the line is. I don't want my line to go completely away because I want to know where it is. You'll notice that I'm brushing and arcing this way and brushing and arcing that way. This will be a little bit important.
Arcing brush.
arcing your brush. I'm going to get a little bit of my pink here, a smidge. And I'm going to come here. And now you can kind of see what I'm meaning about the way that the sky will be. So let's arc it this way.
Ooh.
And then arc it this way.
And that's so you get it kind of mirrored.
And that's so we get the mirror. Now the other thing I'm going to want to do is make the water just a bit darker. So I'm going to get my purple even a little bit into my magenta. And just make sure that this mirror is a smidge darker than what's above it.
Yeah.
Now, this is a pretty forgiving version of this reflection because we have a nice landscape in the middle, and that's going to keep it from being too much. Now, whenever I rinse out my brush, I wipe it out in a towel. I'm going to go like this. Now, let's get some blue. Let's transition into some blue. So I'm going to load a little blue onto my brush and some white. Let's come right here. There we go. And kind of blend these two. This is just the start of it. And come do the opposite on the bottom here. And I'm going to take my ultramarine blue and phthalo blue and mix them together. And you can see that this creates a slightly darker value down here.
Ooh.
Same,
but
darker.
Huh.
It's just a start. It's just a beginning. Now, if you have a second dry brush, it can be a good idea to go over your painting with that. You want a soft brush. I have a second mop always on hand that is dry. So I'm going to come here and just make sure that those two areas of my painting have a good beginning and a smooth finish. All right. If I'm going to do the top and I'm going to rinse out, I want to make sure that that's very dry. So you can see me really trying to dry that out. And we'll blend this here as well. Sometimes little steps. I'm going to make sure that's very covered. So see, we're getting that finished bit.
So can I ask you?
You can ask me anything.
If you're wanting to do the sides to match this kind of thing, do you just go in afterwards and do it?
If you're going to do the sides, and I do like to at least paint around the edges here, but if you're going to do the sides, you're going to want to take this moment and lift your surface and paint the sides a little bit to match it at this stage.
At this stage.
At this stage. Some people come around and they just pick a predominant color, John.
I like that.
Right, where they just come and they just go, I'm going to do light blue on these edges.
That's my favorite.
Is that your favorite?
That person, everyone says has different opinions.
I mean, you're allowed to have them.
But my personal, I love when you pick a color from the painting and paint the edge that color. It kind of creates this cool finished frame look. I know it speaks to things, but just
That's that. I like framed. He likes painting around the edges. What I'm going to say is, you really can't do it wrong. It's your painting. But guess what?
What?
This is step one. So we need to dry this and come back to add a little bit of personality to our sky.
Back.
Yes, for two. We got to come back for two.
For two.
For two. For step two, we're going to come in and put a little drama in our sky. We're going to put in a little bit of dawn drama of light coming in some very soft implied cloud forms. They're almost mist, they're almost cloud. They're a little simpler than traditional big cumulus clouds. And you remember which part is your top part. Your sky part is the lighter value. Your water part is the slightly darker value. I like to come back with this same mop brush. I really like this mop brush and this round blender for my clouds. I find them to be super useful as well. I'm going to come in and I'm going to add maybe a little bit of yellow coming up, some dawn. I'll get some of my pink into it. I'm going to come here. You can see it's on the brush like this. And I'll go ahead and add some of that. Now underneath, I might darken that a bit. And you can see how what we make up top, we're trying to make down below.
Mm.
We're leaving these very random, very open. That's one of the nice things about these brushes, being so fluffy and weird and capable of doing this kind of stuff. I'm going to come in and put in maybe some more interesting little side skies here. Load all around the brush. Get some white into it. And it really, whatever I do, as long as I do something similar down below, it will feel, it does not have to be perfect. So don't be too worried, because we've got some trees and things that we're going to be putting here. And so that will be kind of taking care of some of this for us. Let's get a little of our red and our yellow. I'm going to go wiggle, wiggle. Little red and some of our yellow. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Just a bit of that whoop, drama.
Oh, boy, that's so good.
It's just pretty. It doesn't take like a huge amount. And then you can kind of look at it like this and say, you know, do I have a nice and interesting up and down kind of sky? Now, I want to come here with that round brush and just put some interesting sky forms in. So again, this is a round blender. Mops and round blenders are nice to have in your paint kit. I'm going to get a little of my yellow and some of my white. Just sort of make sure that we've got something happening here.
Oh, yeah.
On both sides. Now where we're going to have a bit more focus, we can take the yellow a little more here. And it being a bit brighter will help it feel a little more like maybe a dawn is coming up.
Yeah.
And then on a last little touch, I'm going to go ahead and I'll get even a little pink and white on there. I haven't really rinsed out my brush. Let's come here and wiggle some upper atmosphere little light clouds.
Ooh.
And then try your best to kind of wiggle the same shapes, but in the reverse. Not exactly perfect, but you can see that they are similar.
Yeah, they definitely have the feel of each other.
And now in nature, it's probably very perfect. But we're people, and sometimes just the general gist of a thing will get us there. You know, I can go like this here, maybe a little white into that. And then you can kind of look and see how you feel about that as two little sky reflections.
Ooh.
I think with the trees, we'll have some very nice energy right there that we really, really are going to like.
Yep.
So we're going to call that the end of step 2, because we're learning that process of mirroring. So just get yourself to here. Some things to think about is that as we go on to 3, before you move on, remember to be very relaxed with yourself. If you're having trouble with these techniques, you know, we've got videos for mastering these techniques, and I highly recommend them. You can practice anything that you're seeing here on a scratch piece of paper before you do it on your canvas. I promise it's very doable. So let's get on to step 3 and start creating the world in which we're mirrored in. Now, in 3, we're going to want to start putting in some distant bush and land mass. We're going to use some brush techniques, and we're going to be trying to hit a value that's a little darker than our sky and muted and neutral. And this is going to create atmospheric perspective, push these things into the background. The first thing I want to show you is to test your brushes. So I'm going to put out some scrap paper here. Now I'm going to be making some distant bushes, and I want to make sure, I'll get into my purple and pink here, that on these distant bushes that they feel like this, so I can be making kind of a bushy little pattern, right? So I can test that brush. I can also see like, well, what about this brush? Maybe this brush would make a better one.
Mm-hmm.
Always test your brushes. Don't get too caught up in, oh, does it have to be her brush? Could it be another different brush? It can. There's so many brands and different products out there that what you want to do is find out what your tools will do. Now, out of the two of these, I'm really kind of liking what the Princeton Round Blender did for this. So that's what I'm going to lean into. But again, test your brushes. Get your hog bristles out. Get your stiff brushes out. See what each of them will do. Will they give you these techniques and effects that you like?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to turn again my surface to the side because, again, I'm wanting to create the mirror. Another little trick that I can do is that as I am doing these little bushes, right, I can sort of chalk them in so that I make sure that those shapes that I'm getting, right, are mirrored. So if it's something that's hard for you to see or do,
Mm-hmm.
remember that you can do that. You can use chalk, kids chalk, this type of chalk. This is a credit color, pastel white pencil. Anything that's not oil-based, you can use that to test that. And I'm going to want to take my purple and my pink because this is a bit like what's in the background.
Yeah.
These bushes are a little bit distant. Get my black into them. They're a little bit muted. They're not strictly gray, but they're going to be a little bit.
Mm.
Now I've got dark silhouettes coming up front. So I want to make sure that when I go to do that, there's room for the value change.
Yeah.
You can bring the black over into it over here as you need. Getting a little bit of the white. And just be thoughtful. Bushes, they grow up, they grow down, right?
Yeah.
They have personality. But if they grow up here, they have to be reflected here.
Mm.
Now, I don't want to paint out all my interesting water, so I've also got to be kind of thoughtful about that. Because I do want a gorgeous reflection on both sides. You can kind of see how I can push these back and forth. And I'm going to continue this down this little aisle of color here. And these are a little misted because they're grayed out. They're not bright and black.
Mm-hmm.
And I can come here and be like, oh, let's duplicate this. See how I can turn my surface and make sure that we have that mirroring.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're looking for, is that mirroring. You can see that the brush is letting me have a kind of out of focus little plant bushy effect.
Mm-hmm.
And that can always be very, very nice. And I'll bring these up perhaps a little bit more strongly right here. Like clouds, you want to make sure that your natural landscape doesn't just repeat itself or clone itself, because that is something that can get in your way.
Yeah.
Here we are, just making these reflections. Pretty great. Now I do want these down here just a little bit darker. And so to get that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with a little bit of purple. And where I feel like they should be a little bit darker, see what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
Just very carefully coming over. I'm not changing the pattern. It's also a good time to make sure that what I have up top is here. And this is that first water reflection. It's the one where there isn't movement in the water. We don't have wind, which would like blend those reflections out or elongate them out. We don't have different other impacts that would change that. So this is a good first one to learn when you're trying to understand how water and light interact with each other. All right, let's take a look at that.
Ooh.
Already, we have a sky above and the water below. You have the slightly lighter value up top, the slightly darker value on the bottom. You learned a thing. Guess what? We're ready to go on to the next step. Let's dry this and get ready to go on to our next step. Now is the time to add the deeper, darker silhouette, the closer land mass with the crisper, more defined objects. But I would suggest that you come back through, and I know we go into our T-square a lot, but it's a really useful tool. I'm going to come here and I'm going to help myself out quite a bit by just putting in this line right here with my chalk, because I'm going to have to do some very specific stuff. I'm going to take my number 4 Art Sherpa round, and I'm going to load just my black because this is much stronger. Right along here, I'm going to again do the mirroring and come here because we know that at least there's this line here. Kind of speaking to what's happening on the ground here. If it widens on this side, it has to do the opposite there. So we're just trying to create that very firm, defined space where this is happening. Now I'm going to also, and this is very important, you've got to have your line work kind of together, which is getting a fine line. I'm going to paint little grasses. And if you're noticing, if the grass curves like that, I've got to have another line that curves like this. See how it blends out and goes like that?
Yeah.
The split. So I might kind of try to create a little bit of landscape variant based on that. Just going through. Maybe I'll add a rock. I can get away with anything as long as I remember to mirror it.
Yeah.
There we go again. Now there's this little bit of land mass over here. I'm going to kind of build up. I'm going to make sure mine does. I can turn my canvas to make sure that I've got it kind of fairly well defined that way. Now you're going to see me do an interesting thing here. I'll paint this top half and then I'll come in and really define the bottom half. So first, I'm going to flick the toe of my brush. And that's going to break a little bit of the crispness of this edge here and kind of imply a little grass. And when I come to do the mirror, it's going to take a little thoughtfulness on my part. That's okay. I'm not going to mind that. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we want the general feel like some of these things are similar. And that we're seeing that as above, so below kind of reflection space. Right, very good little landmass happening here. Darker, it comes forward. It's clearly more in the silhouette, right? You can always darken and make sure it's got a good paint space. The other thing that I want to put here is I'm going to add some fencing.
Hmm.
I think little old fences are fascinating.
Oh, I do too.
And you can see if I bend it over here towards the right, I got to bend it back towards the right on the reflection. They're both here.
Yeah.
There we go. Doing little fence things. Learning this process will help you do all kinds of landscapes just a little bit better. So if I have a little bit of a wire that goes like that, right, because this is a little bit of bob wire.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little bit of the wire that comes down. There we go. I'm just going to repeat stories in both places, therefore creating that illusion of reflection, top and bottom. I really love it. It's looking quite good. Now I have one last thing that I've got to do on this, and that is the trees. Actually, let's break the trees up into their own step entirely because I think that they just require a different focus than the rest of the landmass. So let's dry everything we have and come back for the next step, which will just be trees. So for the trees, I'm going to want to reorient my canvas again to this middle position. That way I can make sure that what's happening on my trunks is easily happening on both sides. I'm going to get my number 4 round out again and just my black paint. Just my black paint. And I'm going to plant the first oak tree here. So let's build up the first one in the sky. I will give him a pretty big trunk, maybe kind of arcing over towards the right. And perhaps a bit of one coming out here. These are just those first little branches. But if I have that there, you know I've got to have a similar thing here on the bottom. First oak. So, weird little tree. Weird little tree. His reflection. This giving tree is going to do that. Now, I think I will do another little tree here. This will be a double trunk sort of coming out from the ground, which happens sometimes. Trees, as our arborist explained to us this year, do this. It's not necessarily strengthening for the tree, but it's nice to be able to show that in your natural space. And then maybe we start with one that's sort of straight. Try to keep your lines fine. We can always add little delicate lines in as we need to. That looks pretty good. And remember, we tested which brush we really enjoyed for leaves. So I think we'll continue that with the number 12 round Princeton blender. I'm going to load it up, not very wet. So it's very, its little bristles are pretty leafy. What we do up top, I want to try to do towards the bottom. You know, reorient, think about this, be like, does this feel like a tree? You know, or a group of trees that maybe have grown together.
A grove of trees.
Well, usually trees have friends. There's mother trees and daughter trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to make sure that what I'm doing on the top there, I duplicate down here. Loading up, not too wet. Maybe this one goes a little bit taller. And try to make sure that this then goes a little bit taller too.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, can I make these feel like these three little stands of trees and these three little stands of trees in their mirror world go together. Let's fill this one out maybe, make him seem bigger and older. And I will just try to make sure that what I see going on up there, I try to make sure happens down below.
Oh, yeah.
Creating that sense of space. And that's just really nice, isn't it?
It really is.
Doesn't need to be a lot. We're just trying to get a little bit of a concept. Now, fun thing that we can do, right? If you want, you can add a little bit of a detail here. You could kind of come in and be like,
ooh,
maybe a couple little birds.
Yeah.
But if that little guy's there, and this is the one that always gets me, right? Because I've got to do the opposite down here. Make sure that I got my birds reflecting. Like that they're both flying in a bit. And just because I'm a glutton for punishment, come down here and try to make sure that I've got a bit of a flying in bird reflection so that the birds can see each other.
Mm-hmm.
He was a little bit smaller than this guy. But now we know that they fly both into the trees in the reflected world and in the top world. You know, same would be if you had a little deer or any little thing that you had there. And then if I want to touch anything up, I can always come in with like my color and be like, no, be smaller if I want to.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like diminishing those so that they have a little bit more of a reflection-y feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
But they would be reflecting coming in, and that's what's super, super fun. It's a good time to take any little moment to like, oh, there's little twig bits here. You can do that now. Little detailing, whatever you need to do. Just make sure that what you do in the landmass happens in both locations.
Mm.
I think we've learned a principle of something here.
Yeah. That looks so nice.
I'm liking it. Okay. Let's just sit there and say that is a win. We've done a quiet morning. We've done a dawn over in the ocean where there was some rippling, there was some motion. We've done the mirror. A lot of times people think the mirror is easier, but actually I think it's an elevated skill.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm going to sign. I'm not going to mirror the signature. I'll take just my ultramarine blue.
Have a little skyrider up there.
Yeah, it would be funny, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to just let the signature, and that will help anchor to the mind to say this is the space of the canvas that is the bottom. We've done that. So that is day 2. Hopefully we're feeling optimistic. Hopefully our wish came true. You had a creative breakthrough. John, thank you so much for spending the day with me. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys had fun too. I did you have fun, babe?
I had fun.
He's so nice. I could not do this program without him. It's so involved, and I'm so grateful.
I love doing this.
Breathe in the creativity. Breathe out the anxiety or worry. Breathe in the creativity. Breathe out whatever you're carrying that you want to put down. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.